So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Villarreal. I go by Liz. I am an alum of the ILLCF Association. I received a scholarship in '05. I consider myself the OG, and I'm also currently the chair of the leadership committee. Welcome you all. Who else would like to introduce themselves? Juan
Maybe we
Carlos?
can, yeah, maybe we can introduce just the team of the Latino Caucus Foundation.
Yeah. Juan
hmm
Carlos?
Oh, hello, my name is Juan Carlos Arenas, and I'm the next, no, actually, the Soy el Futuro program manager here at the foundation. Welcome to the cafecito.
Liz Gutierrez, are you still on, Liz?
Yes, I'm here. Hello, my name is Elizabeth Gutierrez, and I'm the Deputy Director with the Illinois Legislative Latino Caucus Foundation. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi,
We have
everyone. Maggie Olmos, Policy Advisor for the Foundation. Welcome, everyone. So excited to see everyone here.
Marisa Leal, I'm a part of the policy team. I'm the policy fellow, so I work very closely with Maggie.
Okay. And Liz, do you want to go ahead and give us some ground
So
rules and stuff like that?
before we start, we have some ground rules. If you'd like to turn off your camera when it begins, it'll be a webinar. Please make sure that you're on mute. And then it's an hour long, and if there is time for Q&A, we will open up then. So Osvaldo, would you like to introduce?
Well, will do. Okay, well, welcome everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Osvaldo Alvarez. I am the Executive Director with the Latino Caucus Foundation, and I am very excited to host this inaugural conversation with our very own Representative Edgar Gonzalez. This initiative gives you direct access to Latino legislators here in the state of Illinois from the Illinois Latino Caucus Foundation for meaningful dialogue about policies shaping our communities. So today, we are honored to have Representative Edgar Gonzalez, representative of the 23rd District of the state of Illinois, here with us. He is a native of the Little Village community in Chicago, and he has been in the state legislature rep since 2019, I want to say. I remember since the very 2020. Well, okay, you see, I feel like it was in the beginning of 2020, right? Like it was January or February. Por eso me confundo. So he represents the largest Latino district in Illinois, including neighborhoods of Little Village, Brighton Park, and the suburb of Cicero. And today he will share some of the insights about his journey into public service, the legislation he has championed, and the growing impact of technology, AI, and cybersecurity policies on Latino communities. So with that being said, Representative Gonzalez, this conversation is meant to really be a conversation. I am going to be asking you a whole bunch of different questions about you, about your life, how you got here, why you're here, what you care about, what you want to do, and what are some of the messages that you would like for all of us to hear. But with that, Representative Gonzalez, if you don't mind, maybe introducing yourself, let us know a little bit about who you are, and maybe if you don't mind sharing something that none of us would have known about you.
For sure. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm State Representative Edgar Gonzalez, and I represent the 23rd House District, which, as Waldo mentioned, covers the areas of Little Village, Brighton Park, and Cicero. It also is the youngest district in the state, the most Latino district in the state, the most undocumented district in the state. And because of all those factors, I would arguably say that it is the most working class district in the whole state. So because of that, I would like to think that I am representative both noun and adjective of this district, because young Latino, come from a working class family, come from an immigrant family. It's a case in point. That I am blessed to be in this position. It's been 6 years that I've been serving as a representative. I started January 2020. I started midterm. I was working for Congressman Chuy Garcia right before that. I had just graduated from college. I remember the dates exactly. May 30th, 2019, I graduated from college. 1 week later, it's January 6th, I had my interview with now congressional candidate Patty Garcia for Congress, but she was the chief of staff before that and district director at the time, district director when she hired me. I made my yes and I started working for Congressman Garcia in June 13th, 2019. 7 months later, I became a state representative. So that year in particular was a huge shift for me. And I think that it was just a huge shift for politics all across the Southwest side too. 2020 was the last year of Trump's first presidential administration. And so, you know, a lot of people were agitated, a lot of people were ready to get involved, a lot of people, you know, were trying to make their mark in state politics in particular, because, you know, because we did not have an ally in the White House and we did not have somebody who was advocating for us in the White House, you know, it really fell on, you know, the local politics to really step up. And so I think that because of that, there was a shift in focus and influence to state legislators. And I would think that I'm a part of that shift, along with all my other colleagues within the Latino caucus. The fact that, you know, 20 something years later, the Latino Caucus Foundation is bigger and better than ever with the guidance of our executive director, Oswaldo, and all of his team. You know, I really, it speaks to the fact that, well, one, Latinos have become a lot more civically engaged, have become a lot more politically engaged. But at the same time, too, I believe that, you know, as time has gone on, we have been able to make our voice heard louder and better than ever in both English and Spanish. I think that, you know, it really speaks to the organizing efforts of so many community organizations, to the organizing efforts de gente de más abajo, más arriba. You know, I think that, you know, all of our work together is our ancestors' wildest dreams. But, you know, we're here to do work, and, you know, especially this, you know, now that we're 1 year into the second Trump administration, the work has become a lot more difficult. They say, I think it was Justice Brandeis back in like the early 1900s said that the states are the laboratories of democracy. So many times, is that when we're trying to test out different policy ideas, you know, before they reach the federal level, before they reach federal rules for executive orders, or they reach federal, you know, federal statutes, through, you know, legislation through Congress, the states are the laboratories where we test it out and see, you know, how some ideas work. So, you know, the topic of today, data privacy, AI, and all that stuff, is that, you know, it's a Illinois is a microcosm of all that. We have huge influx of data centers. We have, you know, a huge influx of, or a huge rise in prices in electricity because of the energy cost and energy needs of these data centers, of the advent of AI. And so we're dealing with this right now. We want to make sure that Latinos have a voice in these conversations. Hence why we're here, you know, and hence why I elongated my introduction right now, to talk about you know, the importance of the topic of today, as well as grounding this conversation, you know, in our shared experience.
Yeah, so we are going to get to data centers and AI, but I have like a whole bunch of questions for you before that, including why do you have so many books and did you read them all? Because I'm seeing, I mean, but before I
I,
get oh, did you
I
actually?
no, literalmente, I love to read them. I got a bunch more at home. Well, one, I think it makes me look a bit smarter,
There you
especially on
go.
video. But two, when I grew up, I mean, books were huge for me. Because me recuerdo mi mamá me regañaba if I would hop on, you know, my Nintendo 64 back in the day. Because I'm like, ya terminaste la tarea, like you didn't, okay, then don't do it. Like you gotta finish everything first. Or if I could play with my Legos, there's a Lego set right here of the White House. That one of my boys got for me for my birthday. So those two things were like my like extra wants. But I couldn't touch them unless I had finished my homework. And I think that, you know, as long as she saw me reading a book, I think that guaranteed my use of my Legos or my Nintendo. So Legos have been a huge part of my, I mean, books have been a huge part of my growth. Well, I love everything, but in any case, but um, I I grew up with with so many books. De que I remember cuando yo estaba creciendo, mi papá came from a working class family. Mi papá was a technician. Mi mamá was a homemaker. Y mi papá siempre decía, my dad would always say, de que a lo mejor no tengo dinero para un juguete, pero siempre voy a tener dinero para un libro, especialmente si es un libro que es para que aprendas más, like not just fiction. So there's a huge focus on nonfiction. All these books are nonfiction. It speaks to me thinking de que, y si voy a aprender algo, I need to choose from a book like this. And so that, I mean, that speaks to, the internal sacrifice family wise, but yes, I do love books. And
No, hey, I just gotta say, I mean, and Rep, I just have to say, one of the things I gotta say in working with you along the years is that you are like one of the very few people who I have known and who has been, so okay, maybe I should say something. When I started working in the field of nonprofit, what have you, as many of you know, I mean, if you're Latino from Chicago, what have you, your first language is not even Spanish or not even English, it's Spanglish, right? And you know that all, and that's why and we all know how to speak that. And if I speak it to you, you know exactly what I'm saying. Even if you're not fluent in Spanish, you know what I'm saying, right? And I remember when I first met you, you were very big in embracing Spanglish as your language, right? That's something that professionally has not happened before, and you have given permission for that. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think this is something very powerful for all of us Latinos who are in the space, and having you be someone who has opened that door for us. If you don't mind saying a little bit about that.
no, no, 100%. I actually have quite a bit of debates on what exactly Spanish is. Is it code switching between English and Spanish? Is it using both, like cosas como parquear, o de que se va a frizar las
Yeah.
cosas, like those different words? But in any case, being comfortable using Spanish, I remember there was a moment, back in 2020, where it was like me and Representative Ortiz, we were inside the house, and I'm like, in this square footage, in the whole capital, there has never been this amount of Spanish spoken ever. And I actually get mad when I talk to people, and I'm talking to them in Spanish, y no me contestan en español. But I think that's more so because like we are Latino, this is our language. I know all of you can speak Spanish. Let's reclaim this language. It's because in the end, it is our language. For many of us, it is our first language. Spanish was my first language también. And so I think, but at the same time too, especially if I'm dealing with Latinos, the Spanish just comes out naturally.
Yeah.
That has gotten me into some passionate discussions, especially with Latinos who cannot speak Spanish. Like, and I get it, everybody has different backgrounds, different
Yeah.
experiences. Pero para mí, si eres Latino, if you don't know Spanish, you need to make the attempt to learn Spanish because if it is our language, and we need to reclaim it, especially in a time like now where reclaiming Spanish, reclaiming our identity is such a huge thing. Is that when Trump is trying to take everything away, it is one of the little versions of resistance, little forms of resistance that we have.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, and I just got to tell you that for me, so I am one of those kids in Chicago who grew up in the bilingual programs. Are you one of those kids too? Were you part of the bilingual programs growing up and all that good stuff?
Absolutely not. Mi mamá siempre se excusa.
No.
Mi mamá siempre me decía, dice, she's like, si yo te meto en clases bilingües, you're not going to learn English or Spanish correctly. O te metes en uno, te metes en el otro. And obviously,
Ándale.
I was going to go into Spanish classes. So, ella me metió in English classes. Around the same time, she also started taking English classes at Arturo Velázquez,
Ah.
which was only like a few blocks away from my house. And I remember that one time she was trying to speak English at home. I don't know por qué, but my mom always brings this up all the time when we have these discussions about why we speak the way we do. Where that apparently when I was very young, I told her like, mami, mejor el inglés lo dejamos para la escuela y el español lo usamos en casa. And that has been the rule. With my mom, I only speak Spanish at home. And with my sister, I mean, that switches up. With my dad, it's mostly Spanish.
That's
But with
right.
my mom, it's always Spanish. And I think that because I was able to make that distinction between like, el inglés es para el trabajo, el español es para la casa. When we're dealing with a lot of people, a lot of working people that might remind me of my parents or working people, todo eso, like at this point, my job has become representing gente que son con mi mamá, con mi papá. And so being able to switch between the two is extremely essential for me. Because obviously people feel a
Yeah.
lot more comfortable speaking in their own language.
Yeah, no, I just gotta say, and again, thank you for that. I really mean it. Thank you so much for who you are. Just your presence, as I'm saying, is kind of, when people say your presence is the resistance in many shapes and forms, that's what you're doing. You don't even have to do anything more, just who you are. Yeah, yeah, ¿verdad? And so, but with that being said, I guess, okay, so you have been in the legislature for 6 years, right? Tell us a little bit about that. what is 6 years? I mean, I
That's
don't
a
think
loaded question.
Tell us a little bit about those 6 years. How has that journey been? You know what I mean? Like that journey from the beginning to where you are right now.
It has been the ride of a lifetime. And it has been a roller coaster. There's been so many emotions. As the Starting with the fact that I started January 2020, is the under the shadow of a domino effect of a previous legislator, that did not put our communities that put our community's reputation on the line, and overshadow the good work that as legislators the Latino Caucus has done, that the foundation has done, that our communities have done. So when I started, my biggest thing was that yo tengo que entrar y hacer todo limpio. I mean, obviously, like that was always
Hmm.
going to be the intention, but there was a conscious effort for it. My mom, when I started, I remember, ella me dijo, dice, mijo, yo tengo un apellido, no me lo manches.
Ándale.
And that that has always stuck with me, because like when
Wait, can I interrupt you? What is her last name?
también es González,
Okay. I
pero
was like, I was
like,
like,
and it's like
uh-huh.
because and it's because we share that same apellido, we share that same last name. De que if I denigrate my name, I am denigrating her name too. And I'm denigrating the whole family's name. And I think that with that ethos, and with that thing that was in a sense like always hovering over my head, I think it really guided how I wanted to approach work, and always give the intention that I'm not in this because of personal gain or anything, like just the opposite. Like if I wanted to get into personal gain, I would have never gone into government. Is that there was a lot of jobs to go into after Harvard. Is that but I came back to my community, I came back home. Is that because I wanted to work for my community. And so with that, is that was the guiding principle, that started right into January 2020. March we go into lockdown, then everything is upended. Is that but the thing that I remember, I did an interview with Univision Nacional, 1 week right after I was sworn in, because I was the youngest Democrat in Latino in state history, and I had mentioned that, and they had said, that Cook County is known for its corruption and other stuff. Like, how would you make sure to stay away from that? And I'm like, well, as long as you're as transparent as possible, and as long as you're actually talking to people, I mean, it all starts with people actually trusting. And I think that, again, I'm representative of not an adjective of the district. So yo hablo como habla la gente, yo soy como habla la gente, como es la gente. All that combined, it makes this work easier. So, that is guiding my work, and that's why the biggest thing for us is making sure that we meet people where they're at. Is and for those of you who don't know, one of the reasons why Oswaldo and I have a long-standing relationship is that when I had just first met him, that he was the 2020 census director aquí en el estado de
Uh-huh.
Illinois. And I remember back then the idea was that how can we make sure to reach our most vulnerable populations, the ones who are most likely to not get counted, because those are millions of dollars on the line for our community. And I remember that kid, and Oswaldo can speak to it too, but that we said like, okay, well, renters was one of the biggest group demographics that couldn't be counted. Especialmente en esta área latina, where a lot of people are working class, hay mucha gente que would not be counted. And so we try to find a creative way, like, okay, well, let's meet them where they're at. And if they're not at home, where can we meet them? And well, like muchas veces a lot of these renters, they don't have in like in home appliances to do their laundry. They usually go to laundromat. So let's go to a laundromat and catch them there. And so there was an incentive that we worked with some other community partners, that if you came and fill out your census, you got a financial incentive to then get a free wash and a free dry. And so, I think it was great because it touched so many different sectors. It touched the renters, who would come in and would come and, get a free wash, and, obviously would help, these working class people. It helped a small business from the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And it also helped our goal of making sure that we count that we count people. That sort of work, that was 2020. That's how we started. And I believe that we have done that over these past 6 years, me within my district office. I'm also blessed that my district office is only 2 blocks away from from my house, that it's here in Little Village, I would say the center of Little Village here on 26th and Kedzie, right by the arch. Is that because it is equidistant from all points of the district. Yes, that the map is right here. Yes, is Bryant Park and Cicero as well as here in Little Village. Yes, but also because we understand where our people are coming from. A lot of people take public transportation. They said, batallan para estacionarse. So we want to be in a focal point where we're accessible to them. That is what these 6 years have been about, is being accessible and reaching people where they're at. Because a veces, it's a lot easier for us to just stay put and expect people to come to us. So that is a lazy way to do things. There's a lazy way to do government work. There's a lazy way to do social work, to do nonprofit work, to do all this type of work. But it is upon us to make sure that we reach people where they're at. Hence the intention, hence the initiative, the proactivity coming from us. I think that is how these 6 years have transpired, and everything that I do is guided by that one principle.
No, I can attest to that, Representative. Like, I will say that I remember during those days, like the big part of what we were trying to do was reach people where they were, right? And you were such a young, bright, or I don't want to say, no, I'm not trying to stroke your ego. You were like a young,
people
like
point out all the time,
fresh,
don't worry.
fresh is the word I was looking for. Fresh. It was like a very fresh, because you had just come in, right? And when you had come in, we had all of these different strategies that were informed by best practices, by what are the metrics, by all of these different things that people were telling us. And I remember that you came in saying, "Let's go to las lavanderias," right? And I remember thinking, "That's right. Why not?" Right? And I think that to this day, people give me a lot of credit for a lot of different things that happen, right? And I will say that it wasn't me who did it. It was like, but what I can take credit for is that I was like, making sure coordinating all of it, right? But at the very end of the day, this was you. And for me, the reason why I want to make sure that I say that I can attest to that is that you take it back to basics, which for me is something very important when it comes to thinking about the community, if that makes sense. It's not so much what did the study say about the people, who studied who, that got to who studied who. You were just like, they're there, ¿verdad? Let's put them in las tortillas. I think that you helped me with putting them paquetes de tortillas, the little stickers or what have you.
Yes, 100%. I do remember it's making sure that all the work that we do is very culturally sensitive and is appropriate for our work. But in this in following what you're saying of making sure to give credit where credit is due. My chief of staff está más para acá, se llama Katia. And there's also a lot of her ideas that have really pushed this. I think it's very helpful. Ahorita le está dando pena. I can hear this right next to me. Yo sé que sí. But I think it also helps that I think that within the office too. I mean, back then it was just a team of two, her and me. Obviously that has grown and has changed over as time has gone on. But I think that something that I have said before is that age is no guarantee of experience, but I think youth is a guarantee of creativity. And when you have two young people, I mean, because we're both 29 right now. We're both 23 when we started. And when we started with that initiative, I think it speaks to the fact that we want a new change, a change of face in government should also mean a change in how things are done. Because otherwise you're just having the same methods and the same things with a different face, and fin no cambia nada. It's a matter of also changing the approaches that we take, the partnerships that we build, and those who we choose to elevate, and those who we choose to serve. All of that together, I think it speaks to the approach that we've taken, and I think that we've been able to be consistent with that approach over the last.
No, and again, I mean, one of the reasons for me is that, again, I mean, here to me, here's this legislator who just came from Harvard, right? Who really, he had just graduated now, right? And telling me about las tortillas y las lavanderias, I was like, this guy knows where it's at. Así que for me, that's why it's exciting, right? I mean, I just gotta say that for me was exciting, and for me to see in this last 6 years, honestly, how that's an example of how I've seen how that has anchored you throughout the years. So far, right, that now you are one of our leaders, honestly, for the entire state of Illinois, spearheading AI. I mean, something that honestly is something that is changing every day. You know, every day we're hearing new news about these new companies who we should support or not, right? Honestly, cars that are self-driving or what have you, and to have our little village kid in Illinois lead AI, for me, that is like I just have to say, you know, usually, and let me say this, even based on my experience, right? You know, from where I sit, I get to work with you all. I usually see how many Latino elected officials usually, you know, they start in one space, but then they go to like another space that is similar to the space where they started, from immigration to education or to health or to what have you. But I don't see many times when we go into spaces of either something like this, like technology, or even spaces of like finances or what have you. And so for me, you know, I just have to say that it's a big pride of mine to know that you're leading it. And with that being said, I just want to know a little bit about what took you to the AI and the IT and the cybersecurity space. And if you can tell us a little bit about what that is for all of us who only know the term but have no idea really what it is.
100%. I also think that, especially for our other legislators in both the House and the Senate, is that who have been here for a while, who've been doing the work, is that, like, I came out of this straight out of college, is that I would say in and of itself, I'm a digital native, which is, I think, one of the small reasons why it made sense that, I would be put in the middle, or I would put myself in the middle of these issues. But I think it's just a matter of the spaces where people have worked. Like for example, Mrs. Senator Villanueva and and Leader Avalar, they used to work for ICER, so it makes sense that they're huge advocates in the immigration space. Representative Ortiz used to be a high school counselor. It makes sense that he, has grown in the K through 12 space. As the Representative Norma Hernandez, the chair of the Latino House Caucus, was extremely involved in higher ed. So it makes sense that depending on where they're coming from is, what they can speak to. So I think that myself being a digital native, also the youngest member of the caucus, it kind of made sense that, I would be in this space, considering that I don't necessarily have a IT background. What I do have is I have 1 year in seventh grade, and I took a computer science class.
That's right.
And I
Maybe
think
speaking. Just
and
kidding.
that was enough for me to understand how coding worked and all the Boolean logic and coding Java and HTML and other stuff. So that stuff I do remember. But I think that what's important to make people understand is that people think it's too complicated, and because they think it's so complicated, they don't want to really dive into the issue. But I think that for many professionals, especially a lot of Latino young professionals, I mean, like if you work in Excel, I mean that was all done because of coding. Sometimes the formulas they had to put into an Excel spreadsheet is a different way of coding. It's a different language that you have to put.
Mm-hmm.
And so all that together is we are doing it in a sense. We are already part of that space. It's just a matter of understanding the other spaces that intersect is there with artificial intelligence. I mean, the thing too is that if I would consider myself a huge labor advocate, and most of my work in the House has focused on worker protection and stuff. The thing is that especially with the advents or the advancements as the unbridled advancements of artificial intelligence, is that it portends huge threats to the people in our community. Like for example, kitty corner to the office right now is a McDonald's. It's a corporate McDonald's, not a franchise. And once you go for the drive-through, like now you have Archie, which is their AI version of the cashier that's taking your order. It's like that used to be people that that used to take your order. Now people can say they can like, oh, they used to mess up my order, or like I said, or like maybe now the workers inside can be redistributed to work on like the actual preparing of meals, or the cashier or the hostess. It's like, okay, sure. But the thing is that if there are no guidelines, there's no timelines with this. It definitely portends a lot of huge concerns for the working class, for the Latino workforce in particular. I'd add on to that is that right now there's a huge effort to unionize Uber and Lyft drivers in the state of Illinois. There's a bill to do so. But there are also some bills to allow for a pilot program for autonomous vehicles. Leader Buckner has one. I have one as well. My bill is more so on the safety requirements around this, whereas Buckner's bill is a bit more about allowing the pilot to happen in the first place. I think that I had told the proponents of the bill that I wouldn't push it unless we met with the folks who will be affected, especially the workers, especially those in labor like SEIU Local 1 and the machinists who've been trying to organize those workers. Why? Because yo sé que los va a afectar a ellos. So, that's one example of understanding like how how our work in Springfield has direct impact on the trajectory of companies and research and development, but also on the trajectory of workforce development. It's the career placement and the reskilling and upskilling of the workers that we have right now. And as long as we make sure that we have proper investments in the same way that we are pouring millions into tax breaks and other stuff for these companies to headquarter or have their space in Illinois, it's also a matter of making sure that we are also investing in those programs, those vocational and technical programs, in order to make sure that we are again reskilling and upskilling our Latino workers.
Yeah, I mean, and I also want to say that one of the reasons why I said that there was like a sense of pride that you're leading such committees in Illinois is because also what we're hearing at a more macro scale right now, right? And how ICE is using AI and private data, if you will, right? As they're like looking for people and what have you. Actually, do we have anything here in Illinois, any kind of protections or any kind of initiatives right now in terms of that? I'm just wondering.
Right. There are definitely initiatives for particular sets of data. As obviously in Illinois, we have been a pioneer in our BIPA law, biometric information law. Is that we want to make sure that biometric data cannot be accessed in a way that can eventually hinder our community, especially when it comes to ICE. It's also the same thing with healthcare data. It's that there's some nonprofits that have been worried that because of the funding that they receive, that they also need to keep track of everybody that they serve, and if the people that they serve are undocumented, that they could get cuts. That is another reason why, like, data is the biggest currency that we have right now. Is that isn't like actual greenbacks, that isn't dollars, and because of that, is that we need to make sure that that data is being used properly. Considering is that que Latinos as a whole are are actually very much digital natives, and I mean, and that's like across Latin America, but in Illinois, across the country, in the United States in particular, is considering how young Latinos are too, is that also puts a lot more of our data onto all these all these platforms. Is that I mean, there's some other bills too. There's a concern about social media platforms and what they can portend for kids' mental health. I mean, considering that there's so many kids who are Latino, like who are on digital platforms. What does that mean for the mental health of our kids as well? There's many things. We've talked about the workforce stuff right there. We're talking about the healthcare healthcare issues, but también for there's a bill being worked on right now that will ban cell phones in classrooms, especially in this time where people where kids are afraid instead of even being in the school or going to school because of ICE raids. What would that portend for a lot of our people in that sense? I mean, added to that too is that sometimes a lot of Latino kids, sometimes the schools that they go to are located in rough neighborhoods. Is that I would say that Little Village is great. It is my home. It is beautiful. Sometimes it can be a little rough. But that's why we're doing this work to clean. That's why we do this to clean it up. To make sure that we have the resources for everybody. Pero God forbid, God forbid that we have a school shooting, or an active shooter that goes inside one of the schools. If a lot of these, if kids are banned from using their cell phones, or if they had to lock them up, and put them like in the main office. My worry is the security concerns around that. When lo que pasó en Uvalde, Texas, the reasons why a lot of parents knew what was happening inside is because the kids were texting their parents and were texting, like people outside, like police and whatnot. It's that imagine if they had a ban on using cell phones, because obviously la policía en ese entonces no hizo buen trabajo, and obviously the administration was also slow to react. Imagine what that will happen in our communities, especially for, again, a lot of those Latinos that are already on these spaces. That is a concern for me. So, it's in terms of public safety, in terms of workforce, in terms of, education, in terms of, the healthcare, todo eso. Is the us being on our data being used, is the us being in the cybersphere, is the, is extremely, is extremely
Yeah.
concerning, is that because we need to make sure that we are included as part of those conversations. Now, these conversations have percolated over the last few years, obviously, and there's a lot of bills, that are, they're in the House and the Senate right now. The speaker just launched an AI working group within the House, and there are sub working groups. There are some that focus on the use of AI is the in government in government sources, or children education and social media content moderation. Is the on healthcare. Is the I am the chair of an AI sub-working group that's focused on consumer protection, labor, and commerce. So anytime the AI messes with any of those spheres, is that bill will not go through the sub-working group to then have a recommendation for when it goes to committee. It's actually kind of helpful, because as a chairman of the cybersecurity committee, is that I already see a lot of these issues to begin with, and I do have a lot of representatives from the tech industry who talk to me about these bills with the concern. But also as a member of the labor committee and as a huge ally of labor, they have also come to me and saying, like, they give me the other side. And those having both of these sides together, the labor aspect and the tech aspect, is the being a Latino in the middle of that, is that, I think it speaks to the importance of our community in these spaces, but it also speaks to the effect and the impact that our community would face if a lot of these initiatives and a lot of these innovations happen without our voice.
Yeah, no, I mean, you gave like the best example. Like I was there when in the governor's budget address, when he was the one who said, banning cell phones, right, from schools. Honestly, I didn't grow up in the era where cell phones were a thing in school, so I didn't think about it. And I was like, whatever, ¿verdad? But even hearing you speak, right, now is making me think, oh, you know what, you are right. Like, especially with everything that we're seeing with ICE right now, right? But it just speaks to what I was trying to say earlier, right? And that the importance of why it matters to have someone like you in spaces like these, right? Spaces where decision making would have happened if it weren't for you being there. Decisions will be happening without the input of our voice in there, right? So I just want to say, I just wanted to say that, right? And so I guess, what are some of the things that you would let us that we should know that are coming in terms of tech, AI, cybersecurity, or what are some of the ways that we as a Latino community can help you be able to do your job more like for you to have this army behind you as you're doing your work over there? Like, what are some of the things that we can get behind, if you will?
100%. I think that, as long as for any of these bills that touch AI in any way, shape, or form, is that, well, first you just have to convince yourself that, it affects us in some way. Once you convince yourself of that aspect, I think the how becomes a lot easier. So for example, with the social media, there's what the governor spoke about, a social media tax. Is the like you would hope that then eventually these tech companies don't throw it down onto the consumer. Is this so that's and again, because a lot of us are digital natives and a lot of our kids are on these platforms, making sure that doesn't necessarily hit us. That's one way. It's the with this bill, it's about banning cell phones. It's the like yes, it's adjacent to AI in the sense that it is about technology. It's there, but again, considering that we are digital natives and we have a lot of our kids who have access to phones y todo eso, it's how do we make sure so that we include ourselves in that in those conversations. Instead of testifying in committee, finding witnesses, et cetera, et cetera. Este, speaking to your own legislators, I think that I am pretty easily accessible over Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, and traditional stuff like carrier pigeon, their phone numbers and other stuff. So, I think I'm pretty accessible in that sense. But again, it starts with understanding that, our voices are necessary, not just that they can be, that they're necessary in these spaces. I think that for some of these bills, we're gonna see some bills about algorithmic pricing. And how sometimes like depending on certain data that people have, is that they charge some people more, some people less, y todo eso. And even within like brick and mortar places, like por ejemplo, el Summer Produce de la Vita cobra menos ciertas cosas que el Summer Produce de Pilsen because acá things are slightly cheaper. Compared to the north side, la Aldi de acá es más barata que la Aldi de allá. So you go out to the suburbs, there are different things like that. So, in the end, it's making sure that, there is equity in terms of pricing for everybody. But at the same time, if that doesn't allow, these, some of these corporations who understand, like, their audience, is that if that would mean that there has to be parity across the board and it doesn't allow them to lower prices in other places, they're like, okay, si todos quieren lo mismo, then we'll set the same thing for everybody. They don't hurt us, that we can't allow that. Then at the same time too, I think that for algorithms and other stuff, algorithmic pricing, let's consider what was also at one point considered to fund transit. Which again, the transit is another issue where we're involved in this, both as consumers, but also in the way that it will get funded. One thing that was considered was the delivery tax, not just on parcels like UPS and others, but también deliveries on like Uber Eats and Grubhub y DoorDash y estas cosas. My concern with that, considering it's also on the online and digital platforms, considering that that ICE has been using the parking lots, a lot of a lot of these big box stores, hay mucha raza que ya no va, like especially in Cicero, like going to the Home Depot, the Target, or por allá, mucha gente que no va. So I think that, if we track the numbers, we actually see a lot more deliveries being made and requested in Latino spaces. If that's the case, then these taxes will be regressive on Latinos, because they're the ones who are asking for more of these deliveries. There's a way, if there's a way to geolocate, where these deliveries, are coming from. I would say that in that sense, you had dicho to some of these companies, like freeze or eliminate the delivery tax in certain zip codes who are most impacted by these ICE raids. De que no, es que no sabemos. What does that portend for, cost of living and other stuff en nuestro rancho, in our, in our areas. So I think that, all of that together it's a matter of, again, making sure that, that, our voices need to be heard in that sense. Two, finding witnesses, talking to your legislators. It's the typical process is to making sure también that for the people who are advocating for our communities, making sure that they're Latino. Sometimes we've had some organizations that their lobbyists, they're like, oh, we want somebody with experience or other stuff, and so they get somebody who's been around for a while, and usually son güeros. It's just like, no, we have capable Latinos who have made relationships and are able to do the work themselves. If we really want to be advocating for Latinos, we should start with that and hiring our own. So all of that combined, there's a lot of different things that are coming down the pipeline, and it's just a matter of making sure that we do not exclude ourselves from those conversations, thinking that the conversation is too complicated or the topic is too technical. Nothing is too technical. So we're smart, we can figure it out. This is a matter of plugging ourselves in.
That's right. And so, Representative, it is almost 15 minutes before we close. We wanted to give some time for people to ask any direct questions to you. But I just first want to say thank you so much for all of this. I really mean it. Like not only from getting to know you, getting to know your trajectory, and then the work that you do. As I was sharing earlier, I have been witness in how you are anchored in the work that you do. And so for me, it just brings me so much pride in being able to be able to work, right, with so many people, honestly, who at the very end of the day, like you said, you take, well, as we were saying, you take it back to basics, right? How are people really behaving and how does this affect people, right? So with that being said, I guess I'd like to open it up to questions, anyone in the room. So like if you have any question, if you don't mind raising your hand in the chat, and then we can go ahead and call you, and you can turn on your video and your what's it called, and your audio. So I see Guadalupe Luna has her hand up.
Hi, good afternoon, leader. How are you?
Good afternoon, all good. How are you?
Muy bien. So my question is, being raised where your mom always told you español en la casa, English a la escuela. I'm a mom now. My daughter's going to be 4. My issue is my Spanglish. I'm Spanglish all the time. So my daughter is doing the Spanglish all the time, but then my grandparents are Spanish all the time. And it's to the point where I don't feel like she's learning Spanish as much as she should. I guess my question is this something that maybe I should be putting more effort into myself? Porque I was raised in solamente, ¿cómo te digo? I guess I'm trying to find the words for the question, but I was raised Spanglish, basically.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
For sure.
So I'm talking Spanglish all the time.
No, for sure. I immediately what comes to mind is this. So let's see. Right before, so 2003, we moved. So I was about just under 6 years old. So around 4 or 5. I remember mi mamá lo que hacía is that she would put labels on every item that she could in the house with the name in English and the name in Spanish. And so one, we would know, the difference between the two. But with the thing that she would say in particular is that si me vas a hablar en inglés, no más en inglés. Si vas a hablar en español, no más habla en español. She was extremely consistent about that role. Even when I have given speeches, like, as a legislator, she's like, no, escoge uno and stick to it. Because then you don't sound as professional. That's something that she's always told me. And I think that especially for those of us who live in these spaces, donde se usan los dos, para mí, like, it's normal. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a big concern, because it's like, no estás sola. Hay mucha gente que está viviendo en eso. And as long as you're offering those opportunities to, like, no le estás prohibiendo nada a tu hija. Like, ¿cómo vas a decir que eres una mala mamá? Like, no, it's just a matter of the opportunities that you're opening for her. And the one thing I will say is that in preparation for that, I think for right now, lo que les dije de que very early on, I just took English classes. It wasn't until I got to like high school that I started taking like Spanish for heritage speakers. So if you look out for classes like that, or like those options, that are available for kids, I took those classes. Ahí nomás hablaba puro español, but they also understand that there are people who use a lot of Spanglish. They use a lot of Spanglish, and they code switch a lot, and in order to teach them properly, they say like, no se dice frisar, no se dice parquear, se dice así, así, así. Eso es like la clásica de que no se dice voy a introducir a esta persona, because that literally means insert. It's like, it's more so like voy a presentar a esta persona. So like dependiendo de la situación, is making sure that you find those opportunities for your kid, like tiene 4 años, está chiquilla, like, and then she got a lot of runway ahead of her. But I would think in that way consciously. But the fact that you're thinking about it very early on, is very good. Y también like que escuchen, que se ponga a ver las novelas en español and other things, donde like you can pick up on those words.
Pick up on the drama.
or la clásica, like the way that they told like my mom is like, ponte a ver una película una película, but just put the subtitles in English and put it in English, and then like just immerse yourself. Algo
Yeah.
con ella in the other way. And I think that can. It's like choose a kids movie that they can watch in English and then they can watch it in Spanish. And I think that once they can see that, they pick up on drawing those parallels. Kids are very smart. Like
Yeah.
they pick up on that stuff. Pero that's a very proactive question. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, and I do want to say, Rep, that and kind of like to the point that I was making, and you just kind of touched on that in that we have been told that it's not professional to either do one or what have you, and but in many ways you are doing Spanglish in these very settings that we're talking about, right? And so in many ways, maybe I would say that the rules haven't been there's no I feel like we're creating the new rules, if that makes
Yes.
sense. And I think that Spanglish is something that we've all know, we all can speak it, even right here, Guadalupe or whomever, ¿verdad? But I think that it's like and so that's something that I would give it to Rep Gonzalez, that you've been doing this in these spaces, that now, I feel like it gives permission, and not only permission, it is like a legitimacy, if you will, that that's our language, right? But hey, we can keep on going on this one. I see another question by Joan Napoles. Joan, if you don't mind unmuting and maybe showing your video if you can.
Claro que sí, es Joan Nápoles. Pero así como tenemos todo acá en el Spanglish, no se preocupen.
Bueno.
Yo igual, vine de chiquito a la edad de 7 años desde Cuba y no sabía nada de inglés. So, el Spanglish me ayudó a aprender de lo más bien el inglés. Pero quería preguntarte, Edgar, I wanted to ask you, with this technology advances, because I grew up in the Humboldt Park area, and I worked for some time in the nonprofits in the Pilsen area, and I love the Latino community. I love the Pilsen community. But one of the major things that I see that a lot of folks are struggling with is the understanding the basics of technology. And I love that you're bringing this up, because this comes out from, a place in where I myself growing up, I have to help my parents when they ask me, hey, can you translate this for me? Or, hey, mijo, ¿qué dice aquí en el teléfono? Right? So it's kind of like, what are your thoughts of, with this new initiative that you're trying to put it in on board, of also doing some, how would say, some knowledge sharing for the folks that, hey, my kid is in high school, and I see Edgar is putting out some amazing content and some legislation. What does that mean for me? Right? ¿Qué significa para mí? Yo lo estoy leyendo, pero no sé qué es eso la tecnología. Mijo, ¿me puedes decir qué es lo otro? So how can we, bridge the gap in between, let's say, those high schoolers, kids, or even younger, to say, hey, mom, hey, pa, mira, this is what this means. This is what Edgar is putting here. This is why it's so important for you to be informed in the community. Don't dismiss the information, but it's important for you to understand and bridge the gap and see, oh, okay, that's why we need to have this in our phone, or that's why when I go, to go check on an email, an opportunity, oh, this is where they're gonna send it to me, because I work with folks in the village, and I love them a lot, and 9 times out of 10, I had to make sure that, I'm in the IT sector, so I had to make sure to let them know, hey, this is what an email is. Esto es lo que es un correo electrónico, para que puedas entender, para que puedas poner toda tu información. So, how would you, your initiatives help bridge that gap, close that gap, in technology?
I would say it should be like multifold. Like for example, I believe that seeing how things have advanced and the advances will portend, that everybody should have a basic understanding of cybersecurity in the classroom. And like what I mean is like that in the same way that we have driver's ed and we do sex ed and other stuff, and then even with other things that we have done, we have incorporated certain things into curriculums. It's like the history of Asian Americans, is the history, or like reproductive health, is the I remember I did a bill a while ago, like the contributions of Muslim Americans in American society, cosas así. I think that the time has come for us to do something. I will call it cyber ed. I'm actually speaking with somebody about this right now, of what that could portend. And like in the sense that vamos a imaginarnos de que, like, you know, in sex ed, there's this idea of good touch, bad touch. Like when you start with kids and you do something that's appropriate at different ages, like good click and bad click. Like, can you tell what's the difference between a spam email and you know, what's like, you know, alguien que te está mandando mensajes y resulta de que it's a bot or whatever, like understanding all those differences. Policy wise, I think that's something that eventually should be incorporated into curriculums, and I'm active to introduce sometime soon. Maybe one is, I know that there are organizations, and other stuff. And I mean, like, I think before, I remember there would be like like just general is how to use tech. And I know there's some organizations in Little Village that have done that. De que, especially for seniors. En el caso de Michoacán tiene esos tipos de clases también, of, you know, cómo usar la computadora, cómo escribir una carta, like on a Word doc or cosas así. Like, you know, where to find your file. You know, different things that, you know, for digital natives is a lot easier. I think that, you know, on a case by case basis, depending on which organizations have footholds in different communities, it's a matter of making sure that, you know, we also push, you know, and work with organizations to provide those workshops. From the most basic thing like that, you know, and like just how to use tech in general, but also también for both younger people and then older people, how to use AI. I think that, you know, now it's going to come to a point where AI needs to be included in those like mini curriculums. But those are like the twofold idea, how I think that, you know, this education piece in particular, you know, what it portends for our community.
Yeah, and
Thank you so much.
and I would say, Robert Gonzalez, like you touch a very good point in that here in Chicago and Illinois, we have such a strong nonprofit infrastructure, right, that has been able
Great
to,
civic society. Yep.
right, that has been able to not only provide services within their own doors, but then also been able to extend it into different spaces, such as after school programs, such as like going into the community college and working with adults, right? And I do think that we have that structure, and it's very, very exciting that here, right, if we want to have some sort of initiative, to your point, right, we can lean into them as we're thinking about these bridges. But so with that, we are almost at time, Representative. I know a hand just went up. I'm very sorry. But we are going to have to like end it soon. Rep, any last words before we close?
Again, I think that it's a matter of understanding that our voices deserve to be in these spaces, and you know, all of us we have a shared lived experience, most of us, in terms of the communities that we live in, the spaces where we work in, the spaces where our parents worked in and our ancestors worked in, los países donde vienen. You know, I think that, you know, using that unity, you know, when we advocate for policies that affect our people, especially with what, you know, AI portends, for the workforce, for healthcare, for, you know, for education, for everybody. It's a matter of making sure that a veces, like, la gente no te va a incluir porque no les va a dar ganas, or like they just forget. You know, like they might be ignorant or they might be neglectful. So at that point, like, métase sola. O sea, no vas a andar pidiendo permiso a la gente nada más de meterte, but you know, you do have to come with something in mind. Si nomás es para escuchar, es muy fácil que la gente
We'll give it a
ignore
second.
it. But if you have something in mind, what exactly basic as being included, or it's like about kids that we worry about adults, about seniors, like I said, that has to be present, and that has to be intentional, it has to be and that has to be at the forefront. So, you know, just keep that in mind as we continue our advocacy work. I know there are many advocates on this call, so, you know, I appreciate the work that you have already done and the work that we will continue to do. And you know, looking forward to a hectic session, especially in the House, for his next 2 weeks and up for the end of May. Thank you.
That's right. That's right. Well, thank you so much, Representative Gonzalez, and thank you everyone for joining today's Cafecito. I hope this conversation offered valuable insights into public service, policy, the role of technology in our communities. And if you were not able to join, we are going to be this conversation was recorded, and we are going to be sharing it via our social media platforms. So please feel free to share it among your own networks. And finally, we invite you to continue this dialogue at our Cafecitos with the Latino Caucus Foundation. Our next one is going to be a conversation with Senator Javier Loera Cervantes on criminal justice reforms that affect our communities. We'll be having this Cafecito on March 27th at 12 p.m. via Zoom, where you'll learn how to engage with legislation that impacts our communities and advocate for meaningful reforms. But with that being said, thank you, everyone. Representative, you have no idea how thankful I am about this. And thank you so much for making time in your busy schedule. I know that you were just in Springfield, and I'm sure you just drove in this, I don't know, last night or what have you, and now you're like on a Zoom call with us. But I just want to say really thank you from the bottom of my heart and from the bottom of, on behalf of the entire Latino Caucus Foundation. Thank you for making this happen.
Thank you, Oswaldo. Thank you to all the staff de la Fundación, and thank you to everybody who attended. Muchas gracias a todos.
Have a good one. Bye.
Igualmente.